Frank Napolitano. The organization is the Illinois Center-Right Coalition. We are a grassroots organization of conservative-minded individuals, and our event today is our annual convention. This is the first time we're opening up our annual convention to guests and other groups. We're trying to help grow the organization and to move the conservative belief forward.
All right. What is the goal of the Illinois Center-Right Coalition?
The goal is to obviously get conservative-minded individuals, people that believe in our platform, into office, and also once people are in office, work to help promote those same values in our platform, which consists primarily of pro-life, pro-family, pro-conservative, pro-constitution, Second Amendment, support for that, freedom, free markets, capitalism,
physical responsibility,
and personal responsibility as well are some of the many things that we believe in.
All right. I was curious about your personal thoughts on the Illinois Policy Institute recently retabulating Illinois' pension and healthcare unfunded liability debt at $203 billion.
Well, obviously it's out of control. We need to do something, and the people that are in office today don't have the courage and the backbone to do it. So obviously a lot of these people need to get out of office come November to help fix this problem. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank a few people for helping put this event together. The officers of the Illinois Center-Right Coalition, Executive Director Ev Evertson and Secretary Diane Evertson, who not only helped put the event together, they also were the ones who brought the coffee, the donuts, the juice, and the water. So they deserve their own special round of applause. Other officers who helped put this together, Vice Chairman Phil Collins, Treasurer Rafael Rivadeneira, and the rest of the steering committee, Rich Evans, William Kelly, Chad Coppy, Mike Sitnick, and Jesse Yalanis. So we thank everybody for helping put this together. In a few moments we'll recognize some of the guest groups that are here as well. For the guests that are here for their first time, we certainly welcome you. Thank you for coming to our annual convention. Typically, our annual convention is held just for members. This year we decided to open it up together, open it up to other organizations, invite you guys to join us at our annual convention. We hope that you'll consider possibly joining the organization. There's information in your program. If you haven't gotten a program, you can see Diane at the registration table. But there's information in there about possibly becoming a member. The annual dues is only $10 to become an official member of the organization. And basically what we stand for, the Illinois Center-Right Coalition, is a broad alliance of organizations and individuals dedicated to the principles of individual freedom, personal responsibility, limited government, the rule of law, free markets, and centrality of faith, family, and American life. So we want to thank a few of the organizations that are here with us today, and we're going to hear from several of them now and then several of them later as we move through the program. So special thanks to For the Good of Illinois, Open the Books, Honest Elections Illinois, Illinois Integrity Project, Turning Point USA, Patriots in Action, Illinois Conservatives, and the Americans for Prosperity. So give them all a hand for joining us here today. And I'll be inviting a few of them up to speak briefly. Before we do, if anybody has any questions specific to the Illinois Center-Right Coalition, I'll be happy to take any of those questions at this time.
When was it founded? How long has it been around?
So I think I'm going to actually defer to Phil because I think you were a founding member, but about, what, 8 years now?
More. It's founded January 26, 2003.
So about 9 years. Any other questions? For sure I'd hear about why we moved the event from one location to another and any of that excitement, but
I'll ask that question then.
Nothing's off limits. You want to ask? Well, you haven't asked it yet.
Well, you asked the question I want to ask.
All right, I opened the door. So we were at Liberty Hall originally, and we were offered a donation to use that space. We had recently, prior to being offered to use that space, we had passed a resolution calling for the resignation of Illinois GOP Chairman Pat Brady. That decision for us as a steering committee to pass that was not an easy one. We met twice on the matter. We had a special meeting in addition to a regularly scheduled meeting. We discussed it at length via email. We redrafted how it was going to be written, and we invited Chairman Pat Brady to speak to us in person or via conference on 2 different occasions. He declined both through his staff. We were asking for him to answer some questions and address some of the issues and concerns that we had. He declined to do both. We gave him that opportunity. We chose to pass this. We passed the resolution calling for his resignation. Then we were asked by Jack Roser, who owns Liberty Hall, to rescind that resolution or to find a new location. And we chose, without much discussion, to find a new location. Jack is not a member of the Illinois Center Right Coalition. He's not a member of the steering committee. He's a former member. And in order to vote on these resolutions, you need to be a member. You need to be a member of the steering committee. So we weren't going to let somebody from the outside tell us what we can and can't pass as an organization. So that was why we chose to move the event.
This is Andrew Nelms. I'm the statewide grassroots coordinator with Americans for Prosperity. And for those of you who don't know about us, shame on you. We're a nationwide organization. There's over 2 million activists with AFP across the country and over 60,000 here in Illinois. And we're focused on both policy and activism. On the policy side, we've been very aggressive as of late in pushing for pension reform here in the state of Illinois. Just the other day, we had a town hall in Lamont on the issue. We partnered with the Illinois Policy Institute on that, and also State Representative Durkin. We have one coming up, in fact, on Monday in Gurnee, another one on the 11th of July in Arlington Heights. And so we do try to educate people. And also this past legislative session, State Senator Matt Murphy introduced legislation that we had written that would prohibit public sector unions from donating to the constitutional officers with whom they collectively bargain. Which makes sense because the legislature a few years ago had already passed a law that if I own a private company, I cannot contribute to a constitutional officer if my business has more than $50,000 in contracts with that office. And so it makes sense that we would hold the unions, the public sector unions, the same standard to which we hold the private sector. You know, cross your fingers. I'll give you 2 guesses on where it went, but I think you only need one.
You got a lot of support.
Exactly. Thank you. So we do things like that, but more importantly, we're doers. The activism side of things is really where AFP is well known. Earlier in June, we bussed almost 100 people, including some of the folks in this room, up to Wisconsin to help support the reforms up there. We protest, we do rallies, door knocking, phone banks. Somebody used our Freedom Phone system leading up to the election in Wisconsin, so we're appreciative of that. But you know, we do a lot, and we can't do it without your help. And so I appreciate if you could see us in the back. These are hectic times. The stakes could not be higher, and the differences could not be more stark. Right here where we stand. You know, a funny thing happened on Thursday, if you didn't know. And right where we stand, we're on the edge of a couple of congressional districts here. Down in Aurora area, we've got former Congressman Bill Foster, who voted for the health care bill, running against Judy Biggert, who voted against it and has since voted to repeal it. We have Congressman Joe Walsh, who has voted to repeal it, versus Tammy Duckworth, who is on record saying she's in favor of a single-payer system. And so, again, there's stark contrast. And we have to take the message out, and we're going to try to do it. We're asking for your help, and we appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to come and talk to people about the Illinois Election Integrity Project. As Claire said, it's encouraging, it's exciting, because there are people who are working on this and who have been working on this, realize the need for it here in Illinois, and have decided to take action. So we appreciate it. Some of you here participated in our Team 200 project. If you did, could you raise your hand? Okay, great. What we did, for those who aren't aware of this, is for the primary on March 20th, we invited volunteer patriots from all across the state, from Tea Party organizations, Second Amendment groups, anyone who was interested in participating in an intense poll watcher training project. And we targeted a specific district, which just happened to be District 22, Michael Madigan's district. So what we did was we tried to to get 200. We fell a little short. We got about 150, 160 people to come the night before, get some intense poll watcher training from a group of Illinois election attorneys. The next morning, we were up bright and early, and we had vans waiting to deploy our troops in pairs and teams to every single polling place in Michael Madigan's district. And we had at least 2 people in each location, and they stayed there all day long. And it freaked them out. So, we saw that even that small effort in a primary had a tremendous impact on what went on in those polling places. We also saw the intense ground game that the left has in this state. You know, folks, there are more of us than there are of them. They play the game better than we do. We have a tendency to be quitters. The game's not going the way we want it to, and we take our ball and we go home. And we hide in our little houses while they keep playing. You know, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and a couple of years ago this struck me. From a song of the era, you know, tyranny is like rust. It never sleeps. It constantly is eating away at the foundations of our society. And so if we don't constantly stay on top of it, you know how rust is. If you don't get on it and do some preventative measures, pretty soon the whole structure is going to be eaten away and destroyed. Our elections are the foundational part of our democracy. If we cannot count on free, fair, and honest elections, we have nothing in this country. So what the Illinois Election Integrity Project is all about is trying to do things that are real and substantive, that can have an immediate impact. Now, I've had people come to me and say, oh, voter ID, that's the solution. And you know what? That would be a great solution if we lived somewhere else other than Illinois. Folks, it ain't going to happen here. Until we completely turn over our legislature, we're never going to get voter ID in this state. And of course, even if we did, you know, Eric Holder would be there to fight against us. So we have to go in the back door and find other ways. So these are the things that we've come up with. We're going to educate. You know, and that's something we're really good at. As conservatives, we get the information, we pass it along, we love to send out the emails and all that stuff. Okay, that's the first step. We need to educate. You know, organizations like Acorn, they registered thousands of illegal voters, dumped all these applications on county clerks at the last minute so that the county clerks couldn't properly process them. Our voter rolls are filled with those things. That's where True the Vote comes in. That's where that effort comes in. We need to educate people that our rolls need to be clean. The motor voter law. Who's heard of motor voter? Well, you know, there's a big push on to register everybody in every welfare office, every driver's license facility. Motor voter, which was passed in 1993 under the Clinton administration, was the product, the brainchild of Cloward and Piven. Who ever heard of Cloward and Piven? They're radical leftists who believe in overwhelming the system. And that's part of what motor voter is all about. So that's why the voter rolls get all clogged up with illegal voters. So, of course, then there's intimidation of polling places, and early voting has opened up a whole wide, new Broadway of fraud opportunities. Now, True the Vote's got that tremendous program to clean up the rolls. We need to get people to go and sign up with Honest Elections Illinois, get involved in that effort. I've taken the training. It's great. It's fun. You get to put on your Sherlock Hemlock hat and do some super sleuthing. they've got a great system to do that. So get the word out to your friends, your family, your coworkers about that. Another aspect that we're concentrating on is holding voter registration drives. And this is a key thing in Illinois. There are more conservatives than there are liberals, but the conservatives have taken their ball and gone home. They've fallen off our voter rolls. If we are churchgoers and we are not pushing our church to have a voter registration drive in between services on Sunday, we are missing a prime opportunity to register good conservative voters. We've got a surprising number of eligible residents in Illinois that are good conservatives who aren't registered. We need to go to places where conservatives hang out. We need to go to gun shows. My Tea Party group, West Suburban Patriots, is out at the DuPage County Gun Show every month registering voters. And people are thrilled to see us out there and thrilled to have the opportunity to register to vote. Go to gun shows, classic car shows, home improvement centers on a Saturday morning where you're meeting people who are homeowners, taxpayers, and have skin in the game. You want to go to every Tea Party event and have registrars. You want to go to homeschool conventions, church events, pro-life, pro-family events, events for veterans or active duty military. And that leads me to another one of our initiatives. We educate, we register voters, we clean up the voter rolls. We want to ensure the military vote. Our deployed troops are the most disenfranchised voters in the nation. First, they don't get the opportunity to register. Motor Voter was supposed to make sure that at the enlistment centers, they got their voter applications. The Department of Defense is not pushing that. So the troops, the military people who are working at these enlistment centers, they aren't getting people to register. Then, when you're deployed, you're getting deployments here, there, and everywhere, so your ballot's not catching up with you. We need to push our Department of Defense, our military in our state, to engage those active duty enlisted people so that they can get their change of address, their change of employment, and get their ballot. There are 54,000 uniformed service members who state that Illinois is their state of residence. And then, of course, you've got all of their wives and, adult children. That's a lot of votes, folks. That could turn an election. We need to make sure, because an estimate is up to 70% of our military is a conservative vote. Now, we know that the other side is fully invested in disallowing those votes. They're not going to go out of their way to make sure the military vote gets counted. We've seen what's happened in past elections. We need to be the advocates for our troops. And I'm working with a group of veterans to make sure that that happens. We want quality control and accountability. And Sharon Maroney's group is doing good work on that. She's working through the courts to get voting machines with seals on them and procedures changed. So that's excellent, and we need to stay on our public officials about that. And last, and this I truly say is the last initiative, because this is our last line of defense, is poll watchers. If you're putting all your eggs in the poll watcher basket, I'm sorry, it's a little too late. We still need them. We need them badly, because just your presence in the polls will stop a lot of the fraud. But we need to be registering and doing all these other things beforehand. Now, there are going to be several good opportunities to get trained as a poll watcher. I say your first option is become a paid election judge. Your counties are crying for good election judges. They have to have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats in the polling location. When we had our Team 200 experience in Madigan's district, we had Democrat election judges that just wrote Republican on their name tag. because there weren't enough good Republicans to step up and be election judges. So first and foremost, go to your county, go to your precinct committeeman and say, I want to be an election judge. You'll get paid for the day, it's a long day, that's option number one. And then do what I do, because I'm an election judge out in DuPage County and I have been for several years. And guess what? With the group that I work with, I'm not their favorite. They're like, oh, Carole's working this one. Because you know what? I bring my election judge manual that I got when I was trained, and I make them do everything by the book. Because I'm not there to win a popularity contest. I'm there to make sure that our election has integrity. Now, here are great opportunities for poll watching. We're going to have the True to Vote training that you want to stay tuned in. They have excellent poll watcher training coming down the line. And our group is going to have online on-demand training. Our training will consist of everything we've learned through the T200 experience, plus a lot of the materials that we've been able to compile through working with election attorneys here in Illinois. So ours will be very Illinois specific. And what we're going to do is we're creating a series of short YouTube videos. So you will be able to go online, watch these series of YouTube videos, and we're going to have people reenacting scenarios that you might run across in the polling place. Hopefully using a little humor along the way so it's not too dry. And with these reenactments, you're going to be able to see what a poll watcher can do when they run across these different scenarios. In addition to the YouTube videos, we're going to have a downloadable poll watchers toolkit. And this will be a PDF format where it will have a checklist for you to use when you go into the polling location. From the time the doors open in the morning, first thing you do is you go to the ballot box, you make them remove the seal, you make them make sure that the ballot box is empty. Unlike in Madigan's district, where over half the ballot boxes already had between 20 and 30 votes in them at 6 o'clock in the morning. We've heard it, but we didn't know it really happened. I can tell you it really happened. So that checklist will walk you through everything that you should do from the time you arrive in the polling place in the morning until they close out at night. So those are the tools that are going to be available to all of us. We need to be relentless. Tyranny is like blood. It never sleeps. Please. We are the activists here. We need to be lighting fires. We each need to go out from here and activate 10 or 20 or 15 more people. Because of the few of us can't do it all. We have to light the fire under the rest of the concerned people. There are more of us than there are of them. We just need to be out there and wake them up. Thank you very much for this.
Jon Zahm, Henry County Board member.
All right. You were state director for Rick Santorum's campaign here during the Illinois primary. I was wondering your thoughts on the ability, although it is a long shot, of turning Illinois from blue to red.
Well, I think we can. We need 6 seats in the House and 6 in the Senate. And it is a very difficult map to work with, but there are opportunities, to do it. I'm not making any promises, but I think we're going to improve our lot and make a run at it. Presidential is going to be the hardest, of course, of all of them, but we've got to focus on our state reps and our state senators and keeping our Republican congressmen, particularly our conservative Republican congressmen, like Bobby Schilling.
As conservatives, we have a lot of different ways that we can go with our time and energy. But I want that time and energy to be spent in the right way, winning elections and promoting our cause the best that we can. That's one reason I've gotten involved in a new startup organization called Patriots in Action. I see Carrie Miller's here and Lennie Jarratt and others that are involved in that. We need to be an action tank. Any organization can start. That's why I like the Illinois Center Right Coalition. Because you you guys have taken strong stances on candidates, always conservative candidates. You've taken strong stances when the party loses its way, and is no longer conservative, and leadership's not doing the right thing. You make bold statements. I think that's the kind of conservative leadership that we need. When we send somebody to Washington or to Springfield or even to our local school board or our county board, it has to be somebody that wants to repeal laws, that wants to curb things back, that if they're going to promote legislation, it's got to be good constitutional legislation. We can't be going astray and supporting the wrong things. Let me tell you my story on activism, and hopefully this is some of you are already doing this kind of stuff, and the others be motivated to do it. I've lived in the old 14th Congressional District since 1988. Made a decision to move from the east end, which was the Kane County portion where I've been for 20 years, to the west end, Henry County. People ask, why would you move out to the sticks? Well, we wanted a bigger house for with more land for less money. We wanted that better quality of life. We also are a homeschool family. Thought it might be nice to have a little farmstead, where we can teach kids to use their hands, raise animals, things like that. But I also was contemplating that I still wanted to stay involved in politics and government and elections. So when I got out there, I didn't retire from the playing field. I decided to jump right in. First thing I did was I signed up local school board. There was an opening on the local school board for a 2-year term. They were looking for a volunteer to do it. I had just met the 1-year residency requirement at the time, so I was able to do it. But I didn't get on that school board, just to accumulate a title. I got on that school board in order to affect, positive change and to be a voice for the taxpayers. One of the first things I did was, I would come to the meetings with things that people would say to me in the community, things that they wanted to see change in the school district, spending cuts, certain teachers move towards retirement, other teachers promoted, principals, supported if they're doing a good job, being questioned if they're not. So I would bring these concerns from the public, at these open meetings and discuss them. I was told privately, stop doing that. You're not a complaint department. If someone has a problem in the community, bring it to the attention of the superintendent and the principal, and we'll handle it. And I said, no, that's not transparent. That's not open. Transparent and open means if there's a community concern, we discuss it in open, and we share that, and we try to come up with those solutions. We had another situation in the school district where a gym teacher, health teacher, was quite popular with the students and was good at her job, but the building principal didn't like how she was outspoken, about how the building was being managed. So a move was made to demote her to half-time. I felt that was wrong. I felt that was singling somebody out for being outspoken and honest. Didn't agree with everything that she agreed with, but I didn't think that we should silence her either. So I was able to, there was a board member absent that day. I was able to cast a vote and force a tie, which meant the motion failed. And once the community knew that this was going on, they started making phone calls, and it didn't get brought up again. Teachers still on a full-time basis. So I started working on the school board, trying to be a voice of the taxpayers. And at that point, I saw that, unlike a lot of school boards out here in the suburbs, we had a school board that actually, spent money in a wise manner and did a pretty good job teaching kids. So I didn't feel like I needed to run for another term there. I thought I'd look for another governmental body to serve on where the need might be greater. So I started going to our county board meetings out in Henry County. And what I found there was an area that needed some change. We had a 24-member board, and this is a population county of only 50,000. So I felt that was just much too much government, too big. I also started looking at the policies and practices of that board, and I saw that one of the things they were doing was reimbursing each board member for mileage to come to the courthouse, which is where the meetings were held, from their home. I couldn't believe that. I don't know anybody in the nonprofit or the for-profit world, that gets paid mileage to come to their place of work. It didn't make any sense. So I would go up during the 3-minute comment period, where each person speaks up to 3 minutes, and I would speak about subjects like that. And you know, I was not getting smiles. I was not getting friendly looks from the board, even from Republicans. You know, as I was calling them out on these practices. You know, but the newspaper started to write about it, and I put it up on websites and blogs and stuff. And I was trying to bring this to people's attention. I was also concerned about deficit spending. Just as we've got problems with the state, federal with deficit spending, at our little county, the board passed with only a few dissenting votes a $500,000 deficit budget. I publicly said during my 3-minute comment period, let's look for areas to cut. I eventually ended up coming up with some specific ideas on that too, but they didn't want to say no. They didn't want to say no to the county employees, the police department, or the road department, or anybody else. They just wanted to say yes. So I decided the only way to really affect the change was to run myself. So I started to run for office. I was told, though, by my Republican chairman out there that I should not run for office because I'm too new. You know, I'd only been there for a couple of years at that point. And even though I was on a local school board and had been on a regional school board when I was here in Kane County, I felt I had the experience. I was told to wait my turn. I said, how long would that be if I wait? And she said, well, after about 20 years, then you're considered, to be more part of the community. But even then, you'll always be an outsider.
Oh.
So I felt, well, no, I'm not going to adhere to that. But I had to deal with Republicans, that didn't want me to run. But fortunately, one of the incumbent Republicans, decided that he thought I brought some good ideas to the table. He was one of the no votes on the deficit budget. He's one of the more conservative members. He's busy with his business. He couldn't make all the county board meetings, so at the last minute he decided to drop out and endorse me. So I ended up not having to run a contested primary. I ended up essentially getting his spot. But then we had to take on the Democrats. The board was 16-8 Democrat, and it had been under Democrat control for over 20 years. At one point, they had forced a tie, but it's never been in Republican control since, I believe, 1982. So, working with my now Republican colleagues, we started to campaign together. Came up with some common theme conservative issues, and we ran fairly united. Some were as conservative as me, some were not, but we ran united against the Democrats, and we were able to win. We turned that board from 16-8 Democrat to 13-11 Republican. The way, but winning is not enough. Because too often, I think all of us have helped put somebody in office, and then they get complacent. They kind of close the door behind them and say, well, I'm in. And now I'm going to do it this way. Well, no. I wanted to open the door to more people. So the first thing I did was fulfill campaign promises. I had called on reducing the size of the county board, get that government smaller. And as you know, we're fortunate here, that's the time to do it. So I came up with the idea, let's cut the board in half, from 24 to 12. And again, the Republicans came and whispered in my ear, we're going to lose some Republican seats that way. We just got some Republicans elected. And you might be the first to lose because you're the newest guy around. So that's fine. I didn't come here to make a career on the Henry County Board. I could go serve somewhere else. I could serve at church for that matter. I don't need to be in elected office. So I said, I'm going to push it. So I did get appointed chairman of that committee. And let me back up. The only reason that happened was now we have 13 Republicans, remember? So now we have to elect from among our own a chairman. So the choice became between two people. One was a vice president of a bank, head of our Henry County Economic Development Committee, a conservative businessman named Tim Wells, who ran with me. And the other was a nice man, a guy who's been on the board for about 10, 12 years, serving in the minority, was coaching with a named Dennis Anderson. Well, Tim was a lot more conservative, so I supported him. The party leadership said, no, he just got elected to the board. You got to go with the guy who's been there. And I said, well, I like the guy who's been there, but he's been part of a minority. He hasn't really pushed for anything, and he hasn't done anything to turn this minority around. So I'm going to go for the new guy. So out of the 13 of us, 8 voted for Tim and 5 for Tim. So that's how we got the conservative chairman. Then the conservative chairman appointed me in charge of the reapportionment committee so that I could push my idea of reducing the board. Well, we did not, I couldn't get much support for this. In fact, I only got 3, myself and 2 other votes for, out of the 24 to go with 12. And then I tried 18, and I got 8 votes for that one. But I was able to get 13 votes on a party line vote for 20. So at least we reduced it a little bit, so could have been worse. I've tried to get them to eliminate this idea of paying the mileage to go to the courthouse. I can't get hardly anyone to go with that. And there's only, I think there's 2 others that follow me and don't take it. I mean, that's the first thing to do. It's one thing to complain about something. Sometimes we have politicians that complain about term limits, but they stay forever. I kind of like Jim DeMint, complains about term limits and leaves. Pat Toomey complains about term limits and leaves. I think that's the best way to do it. So I complain about mileage and I don't take it. And I'm trying to encourage others the same way. And then we face deficit budget situation again, and the unions filled the room with signs on wood posts and standing room only saying, you can't go for deficit budget because it's going to cost us employees at the courthouse. Or you have to go with the deficit budget because if you don't, it's going to cost us employees at the courthouse, cops on the street, there'll be blood rolling down the street because no one will be protected, all of these terrible scenarios. Well, I spoke out against the deficit budget. I came up with a couple $100,000 worth of cuts. They didn't even want to give me a hearing on the cuts. So we ended up passing a $720,000 deficit budget with 5 Republican and 1 Democrat no, unfortunately. So now, as we go into the next election, I'm highlighting some of these issues, the deficit budget, the mileage, things like that, and I'm hoping that that we end up sweeping, and that those people that voted against it get voted out. Although they won't all get voted out because, like I said, some of my Republican colleagues voted for it. Push comes to shove, I support them over the Democrats because of their positions on other issues. So I just want to give you some encouragement. So what do we do now? There's a lot of options. That people talk about third parties. They talk about sitting on their hands. I've heard a lot of different things on the internet about what we as conservatives should do. Here's my advice. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work for the conservatives, that deserve support. There's dozens of candidates, hundreds of candidates in Illinois that we can choose to support. We don't have to be obligated to support everyone. As individuals, we can only effectively support probably 2 or 3 or 4 candidates. So I say focus on those races. And amplify your voice through groups like Illinois Center Right Coalition and Patriots in Action, for the good of Illinois, and other groups that are out there, in order to amplify the voice and to multiply yourself. Now, as I look around the room, we've got Rick Grabowski here. Now, this is a guy, that's a true blue conservative. You don't have to have any hesitancy, in supporting his bid for Congress, in the 3rd district, because he's going to stay true to the principles. I worked side by side with him on the Santorum campaign. It would have been easy for him to stay out of that campaign because he was running for office, but he wanted to support who he felt and who I felt was the most conservative candidate, so he stood up there with guts. And his primary was interesting. To the left of him, was a rhino, someone who had a Democrat voting record. To the right of him was a neo-Nazi, and I don't use that loosely. I don't want to slander anybody, but that's what the guy's background was, verified. I never thought Rich would be the middle candidate. But he was. Is it the Steve Miller song? You got rhinos to the left of me, neo-Nazis to the right. I'm stuck in the middle with you. You know, that's a good race to get involved in. I see Ben Markham here. He's with the Jim Oberweis campaign. You know, Jim Oberweis is a strong conservative. There's no argument on that. You know, Jim ran a good primary and won. I think he deserves all of our support. You can't buy him. He's independent. You know, and that's important. You know, that's one reason I like Jim, and I like Dave McSweeney, and I like Adam Andrzejewski. You know, they're not corruptible by money because they've earned their livings. You know, and that's important. I'm not saying everyone should be a millionaire to run for office, but the benefit of some of those independent conservative candidates, you know, is that they're incorruptible by money. So many. I won't use the name, but I know a state representative in Springfield that I helped get elected. He'd been down there a year, and he said to me, you know, when we worked together in the campaign, he said, if I ever stray from the things that we run on, come see me, get me straightened out. So about a year later, I drove to Springfield, and I said, you've got some bad votes, you know, and I pointed them out. And he said, well, those were party votes. So what do you mean by that? He said, well, this was the caucus position, you know, that we were told to take. And I said, well, a no vote would have shown some independence, probably helped you back home. And he said, yeah, but I'm getting $7,500 a year now for being a deputy leader, and I can't afford, you know, to lose that because I've let my business slide because I've been busy doing Springfield stuff. So we can't let ourselves, you know, be bought, you know, by money, you know, and lose our principles, you know, over that. So I think those are the main things I wanted to say. You know, just remember, let's be action oriented, you know, not passive. You know, let's pick the right candidates, you know, to work for and support. If those candidates stray, you know, from us, then we vote them out. The late Bill Damish, you know, who used to be from the Elgin area in King County, he was a party leader, party chairman. He got me involved in the township supervisor race. He said this guy, this is Rutland Township, just north of here. So this guy broke the promises that he ran on. He became liberal when he got in office. So he said I put him in. Now I'm going to take him out. And he did, with my help and the help of the voters. And we ended in that race. We had to be a little bit quiet about it, but we ran an independent conservative against. He was a Republican, you know, but he was a Rhino Republican. You know, this is not. I don't see Republican on here. So I mean, this is a conservative organization. Sometimes I don't think we should do it a lot of times, but sometimes. You know, we need to cleanse our own party, in my view. You know, and we can't be ashamed of that. In this county, a number of years ago, I supported Pat Perez, a conservative Democrat, against Ken Ramsey, you know, a Rhino Republican sheriff. I had filed a Freedom of Information Act request about 6 weeks before the election because I had found out that there was some bad spending going on in the office, some abusive spending, even some double billing of expenses and some different things. So I wanted to unveil that to the public, you know, regarding then Sheriff Ramsey. And I got a lot of grief for that because Republican precinct committee should be supporting every Republican in the end. But I think I was proven right because my FOIA request was fulfilled. I got a phone call on election day at 4 in the afternoon from the FOIA officer. That they've been stalling and delaying my FOIA, and the law was not as it's tougher now than it was then, so I didn't have a lot of recourse, you know, to their delays. And I got my big packet of stuff, and it was enough there to beat it, but it was too late, and they knew it. That's why they gave it to me on election day. You know, so I think I was vindicated on that. I said, if I have to, I'll back an honest Democrat over a dishonest Republican every day of the week. You know, I'm a Christian first. You guys know the name of my business, Elias Lair Communications. You know, I want to answer to God on doing integrity-filled things. You know, not backing somebody to make an extra buck. You know, I I'm not the richest political consultant in Illinois, but it's because I don't work for just the person who can pay the most. I work for the person that I think has the best principles. I encourage you guys to do the same. I see Bill Lucher in the audience. He's got the same philosophy as me. He doesn't work for money. He works for the candidates that have principles. He won't lend his skills, and they're considerable skills, writing and internet, things like that. He won't lend his skills unless he truly believes that they're conservatives. So, thanks for letting me speak. I look forward to staying with you.
First, when we were talking about names, the first thing we always made sure everything was going to be action. You know, you see people talk on Facebook and stuff, they're like, oh, we're going to vote in November. Voting is no longer good enough. You have to work for the candidates. You have to make phone calls for Rich, walk for Rich, find the conservative candidates, and you've got to get active. An hour a week makes a huge difference in who gets elected and who doesn't. That's why we have so many rhinos right now in office that are still running, because the conservatives we have our lives, and we're not paid to go out there and do this. We volunteer. But we have to do more than just voting. We can no longer afford to just sit in a meeting anymore. We have to get active. We have to act on what we've learned and help people like Rich. I was at a meeting last night with John Bambenek. He's another candidate running down to Champaign-Bloomington. He's another guy we need to help. There's county board races. You don't have to think all congressional. We have a mess here in Illinois that we have to start fixing, and it starts at the local level. If you look at how the Democrats work, a lot of their actions, they try to take over school boards, they try to take over local villages, and they run on the nonpartisan, and they get Republicans to help them. But they've built their farm team. The people on the school boards move up to the county boards. They move in, they become state reps and state senators and move on to Congress. We have to start building our farm team, and we have to start acting, we have to start recruiting people. In Lake County, in 2010, during that whole wave, working with Joe Walsh, working with some of the other candidates, a group of us started recruiting people to prepare them to run in the spring elections in 2011. We had 35 people we were able to recruit before the November election in 2010 that wanted to step up and run for local office. We got 23 of those elected in the spring of 2011. We took out school board presidents that were unionized. When you're out there now working for other candidates, when you're talking to people, start engaging them about what they can do, what office they want to run for. We can help train them on how to run for school boards, how to run for village boards. You'll be amazed at how many school boards don't even have enough people to run for the school board, and somebody can go as a write-in or have to get appointed after the election because there's nobody running. We don't have enough people running. And like Carrie said, the majority of your property taxes go to the school districts. And it's follow the money. There is a huge amount of money in education. In education across the country, there's over $600 million that goes into education. When they talk about education being unfunded, the only thing that gets more money than education is the Department of Defense. So if they're not underfunded, they are good at talking about it because it's the kids. And so that's one other thing we have to learn is how to use their language against them. It's real simple to start doing. You start looking at that keywords, fair share. Yeah, okay. Everybody we know what that means. It's redistributing of wealth. But you can start using that at the school district level to actually start letting the younger teachers understand what's really happening, because they're not getting their fair share, because it's the union bosses at the top that are taking all the money, and the teachers at the bottom that are coming in are being underpaid. 40% of the teachers that come into the profession, within the first 5 years, they leave the profession because they're not getting paid enough, they can't support themselves. We're losing so many good teachers. And what's staying are the union bosses that are then getting these over-exuberant pensions, 8 times Social Security. It's insane. We can't continue to afford that. And that's kind of why I started For Our Children's Future. I've been a school education watchdog for about 8 years in my local school district in Grays Lake. I started, school district was having a referendum, the 4th referendum in a row. So I'm like, okay, how do I do this? How do I start looking at information? I did a couple of FOIAs, started a website. It's still up. I haven't really blogged on it the last couple of years, but educationmatters.us. I was like, okay, I'm going to post all the information I find. 2 weeks after I did that, just asking for contracts and salaries so I could figure out where the money was going. Do they really need this? 2 weeks. There was a pro-referendum forum out there. They posted how much I paid for my house, who I was, who my wife was, how many kids I had, and the fact that I had started homeschooling that year within 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here. So we defeated that referendum. I helped get 4 school board members elected. They stopped the referendums. There hasn't been a referendum in Grays Lake now in 8 years. They didn't need the money. All the programs were restored over time because they became more sustainable path. The problem is, every 2 years, the control of that school board flips. And you have to stay vigilant, and that's what the school district and stuff rely on. The unions get involved. Last year, in 2011, we discovered a lot of information. Some of you have heard it, some of you haven't heard it, but we uncovered how the unions from Springfield, how they were colluding with the district, how the district was using taxpayer resources, including our superintendent, using the district email services, using phone calls. They were doing everything they could to try to get their 2 incumbent board members reelected so they maintain control of the school board. One of those board members, the school board president, was the union representative in the Northbrook District 30 school district. Right now, I still actually have a lawsuit with Grays Lake School District because of the FOIA laws, because they have refused to give me the evidence of the emails that I've asked for. We've been in court now for over a year, still trying to get that information because they're covering up a lot. Just to tell you a little bit about what we found, one of the school board members was committing felonies. She was using gift cards to go register high school seniors to register to vote, and was giving them gift cards to register to vote, which is a Class 4 felony. The state's attorney refused to prosecute. She's still sitting on our school board right now. There's still a whole bunch of other stuff we're still uncovering. This last week, I finally got the evidence for one part. The former board president, who was then just a member of the board talked in closed session minutes. They colluded how they were going to deceive the public. He was going to resign. They were going to give him a consulting job in the district. He was also helping their re-election campaign. This week I finally got the evidence. He resigned in November. They started paying him in December. They didn't hire him until March. He got paid for 3 months before he was actually hired as an employee in the school district. And that hasn't even got to the federal stuff that they've done, that we're still working on the evidence for the federal crimes. They used federal stimulus money. I don't know if you saw the articles about that. December 2010, the superintendent unilaterally, without the board's approval, gave bonuses to all the teachers and administrators. And one of them actually went to Vegas. I have the emails where she went to Vegas that same weekend after she got her bonus. Those federal stimulus money used to help them get their incumbent school board members elected. And this is the kind of stuff that's happening all over. Just this last week, I had a neighboring school district there in Gurnee asked me to come attend their school board meeting. I filed an open meetings violation with the state's attorney on Friday morning. They were meeting in a back room to start their meeting. They came out, they voted to destroy closed session minutes tapes, but one of the school board members said in open meeting, oh, we were discussing Prairie Crossing Charter School, how they were funded, and how we were dealing with tax objections. Every bit of that should have been covered in a public meeting, not behind closed doors. So it's a matter of getting out there and doing stuff. That's why I started For Our Children's Future. For Our Children's Future, we're going to deal with pensions, but our biggest thing we want to do is I want people across the state to adopt their school district. You can do it by yourself. I encourage you to have 3 or 4 people with you, or a group of people that are willing to do this, because at some point the school districts are going to attack you for what you're doing. And I will come help you. I will come do the FOIAs for you to start with. And our first initiative is going to be Grays Lake. There will be a couple of other big school districts that we'll be announcing here early in July as well. I can't announce today, but one of them is one of the largest school districts in Illinois. We'll be joining For Our Children's Future. But our first target is, I'm going into school districts with the help of community members. We are forwarding all the information we need for the teachers' contracts. I'm going to help teach you and help you. We're going to write a teacher's contract from the taxpayer perspective and give it to the unions and the school boards. Initially, I already know what the reaction is going to be. They're going to ignore us to start with. I know that's going to happen. doesn't really, and I'm not really worried about that because I know what we're going to do in the future. But those 3 to 4 people that we have writing the teachers' contracts, guess what happens in spring of 2013? We get them elected to the school boards. We start taking control of these school boards. Then we start having influence and start influencing the money. I'm going to see. How many think your property taxes are too low right now? You know, right now, all the school districts are doing their budgets. If you haven't looked at your school district budget, you should go look at it. First question you can ask every superintendent, did they include a levy increase in December into their budgets? Every one of them, I guarantee you, has done that. And because they do that, they're already, when December gets here and you go fight the levy increase, they're going to go, oh, why weren't you here in August and September fighting the budget? Because we've already budgeted for this. We have to levy now because otherwise we're going to be deficit spending. So you've got to get out there now, August and September, go fight the budgets, then go fight the levies coming up later on. But it is about education. And I do encourage you, find some other community members to go with you. School districts are so good at using the Alinsky tactics. They will try to isolate you as much as they can. They've done that with me as much as they can. I don't work with the same people now in my school district that I started with. All those people now won't talk to me as much because they don't want to be attacked. One of the people that used to work with me has a daughter that actually has a learning disability, so she has to have extra reading help. She had to actually go to a lawyer and get a lawyer to help her daughter get the reading help because the school refused because they knew she had helped fight the referendum. So she stays out of it now and refuses to do anything publicly. And that's what they're going to do to you. They will attack you. They will personally attack you as much as they can. The one thing they have figured out finally with me, they can't scare me anymore. My wife and I was like, she was like, you know, whatever you do, it doesn't matter. Actually, the best thing that ever happened to me this last year, I finally got so fed up, I actually ran for state senate last fall. Do you know that was when I announced I was running for state senate, the attacks on the local websites and blogs within 2 days completely stopped. Because they realized the more they attacked me, the more it actually helped me. And that's what they kind of do. They love to attack, but when they really see that you've been motivated, then they back off some. And you can't be scared of the local bullies in the school districts. That's what I call them. It's the easiest way to call them is they're the bullies on the playground. That's what they are. They fight it. They talk about being anti-bully. They're the biggest bullies you've ever seen. And you've got to stand up to them. We've got to find people willing to stand up to them and get out there and get active. And I want you all, adopt your school district. I'll teach you how to do the FOIAs. It's not hard. It's really simple to start doing it. And somebody asked me one day, how do you do this when you're by yourself? How do you win? And I'm like, I win all the time. Because even if I don't get the result I want, I alter their behavior and they know I'm watching, they don't do the same thing again. Just a little bit more about Grays Lake, and you'll see some of the stuff that you can do in all school districts that you can find out what's going on. Our school district now, for 8 years, I've been watching our school district. Our superintendent and assistant administrator, both of their daughters have worked in our school district. Our school board presidents, 2 of them, have worked for our school district. One of them just resigned because he's under criminal investigation right now for that fraud we just uncovered. But, but the other one, former school board president, still works in our school district. One of our former school board presidents, her daughter and her husband both work in our school district. Her husband still works there. Her daughter just works there during the summer. And another school board member, her daughter works in our school district every summer. The nepotism in the school districts is insane. They do treat it like their own job program for family and friends. That's what they're doing. And that stuff is so easy to uncover. All you have to do is just start asking questions. And that's what I want everybody to encourage everybody to do. I don't know if you guys know through the vote, Education First. I don't know if you run into that group at all. That group is just a shell organization that they do. They get into school districts. They go in and register kids, 18-year-olds, to register to vote. This one school board member that committed the 2 felonies that we caught her on, actually she's committed more, but we couldn't get them. We knew of at least 3. she registered 110 kids in 2010 to vote in November elections. And they're out there continuing to do this. And so if you run across Education First, that's one of the groups that's doing that. So something to be aware of when you're out there. But listen, we've got to start registering people to vote. One thing I was going to read here real quick, Ecclesiastes 3. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. I'd like to add something because of this week, a time that we have to fight progressive Democrats and a time we have to fight progressive Republicans. Right now, our biggest time, we have to fight the progressive Democrats. We have to stop the Mike Madigans. We have to stop Obama, the Pelosi's. We have to make sure we elect the most conservative person we can. But on November 7th, we have to, 6th is the election. November 7th is when we start fighting the progressive Republicans more. But we need to be planning now. Yes, there are some good Democrats, but the majority of Republicans right now are better than any of the Democrats, especially the Madigan and the Pelosi Democrats. So until November 6th, we have to fight them. November 7th, we have to be planning, we have to start fighting the progressive Republicans, and we have to start, there's people in the Republican Party we have to cleanse. We've got one in Lake County, Bob Dole. There's no way we can beat him this time, but we have to start working on that for 2 years from now and figuring out what we can do and how we can do it. And there's others up there the same way. At the state Senate level, state rep level, we have to start working on beating them. We have to start planning now. We can't wait a year from now when it's time to get petitions. We have to start November 7th, if not before, doing it behind the scenes and start working. But from now till November 6th, we have to fight the progressive Democrats and we have to stop them. And that's the one thing I want to encourage you all to do is get out, work for Rich, work for John Babinek, work for the likes of Michael Carbone, Don Costello, Bob Bednar, the good conservatives that we have to start getting elected because the Rhino Republicans, they're not scared of the conservatives right now. And we have to make them scared of us because they're not going to change their ways until we become a political force and start beating them as well as the Democrats. Thank you.
My name is Miguel Melgar, and I am the Director of Advancement and Development at Turning Point USA. Our group is a nonpartisan group that is targeted towards debt and deficit reform and bringing down the spending levels of the national debt.
All right. Speaking of debt, the Illinois Policy Institute recently retabulated Illinois' pension and health care debt to $203 billion. Your reaction?
It's out of control. It's out of control at the state level and it's out of control at the national level. This year, Turning Point USA is going to have more of a national focus because of the importance of the presidential election, and there are also a few Senate and House elections that are this year as well. However, next year in 2013, because we won't have to deal with the presidential election, we're going to shift our focus to the state governments. We're going to put pressure on states like Illinois, on states like California, and we're going to go around the country and try and rein in spending at the state level, whereas this year our focus is at the national level. But we believe that if we really want to bring reform in this federalist system, we have to attack the national government and the state governments at the same time.
Yeah. Speaking of the national debt, under President Obama in 3.5 years, the national debt has increased over $5 trillion, translating into over $16,000 per person. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that those are also very conservative estimates because when you take unfunded liabilities that are actually over $120 trillion, Investors Business Daily actually did an article in February that showed that if you divided up the debt and looked at it in terms of what each high school graduate will owe within their lifetime, you add the debt now and what the government has promised to spend tomorrow, that number is actually closer to $720,000 per high school graduate. It's out of control.
There's no way anybody can repay that kind of money.
Absolutely not. And especially in this economy where kids are going off to school and they're graduating and there are close to 0 jobs unavailable for them. In fact, there are some reports that say that 1 out of every 2 college graduates is either underemployed or unemployed. And it's staggering. The fact that this current administration, and as along with previous administrations as well, has cumulatively built up such an anti-growth culture and such an anti-business culture, it's going to show that there's little hope for long-term economic growth in the future years.
Yeah. What are, as your group, is your primary thought on reducing the deficit and the debt?
We think that it has to come from plenty of different avenues of public policy. The first thing that we believe is that we need to hold the government accountable. Harry Reid has not, under his reign in the Senate, has not produced a budget in over 3 years. In light of that, there are plenty of government officials in Washington who actually continue to see pay increases every year. We don't believe that Washington should still continually be paid and be given these increases in spite of their performance. They really haven't been doing much. So we, as one possible solution, propose the No Budget, No Pay Act. That if Washington cannot get their act together and actually produce a budget and pass it, they don't take home a dime in pay. No budget, no pay.
Yes, a similar measure, or probably even the exact one, was introduced in Congress by Congressman Joe Walsh.
Correct.
Yeah. That would actually be a nice piece of legislation to see passed.
Oh, we totally agree. And we see eye to eye with Mr. Walsh on this very issue.
All right. And your thoughts on Utah Senators Jim DeMint, or not Utah, but Senators Jim DeMint, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul's 5-year balanced budget plan? Your thoughts on it?
We do think that a balanced budget is necessary. Sometimes things get lost in the details about how to do it. I know that Charlie, our founder, is actually a huge proponent of Representative Paul's plan, Paul Ryan, to balance a budget. I think that's in 20 years. And we do think that any budget that is proposed that never balances, like the Obama budget, is not going to turn our country around. It's not what America needs right now. We need to, 1, bring our spending under control, but 2, in the long term, we need to provide constitutional provisions to actually require Congress to only spend as much as they're taking in.
Everybody awake?
Well,
all right. So I'm here to talk to you today about an issue that I think is of the utmost importance for this election cycle, and that is the national debt. That is why Charlie and I founded Turning Point USA. We learned from Howard Zinn that the best kind of change is targeted change. So we are a fiscal-only group. We only touch fiscal issues. We don't address social issues. And we are purely towards debt and deficit reform. I am right now the Director of Advancement and Development at this organization. And we are here to bring the message to the people about the national debt. That message being that the current debt ceiling is set at $13.4 trillion, and unfunded liabilities exceeds to over $120 trillion. This is money that the government has already promised to pay out, but has yet to actually pay it out in these programs. Mahatma Gandhi once said, to be the change that you want to see in the world. Charlie and I recognize that this is a change that we want to see in America. We do not believe that America can continually function in the long term if we continue to run on multi-trillion-dollar deficits. So we're here to talk about that problem today. We believe that in order to turn around America and the economy, that we must stop overspending and restore the values of fiscal responsibility and frugality in our nation's culture. The problem being that Washington is spending out of control. And that's not only having impacts on the deficit in and of itself, it's having impacts on our economy. That these long-term deficits are actually stifling long-term economic growth. In fact, we can look at what Ben Bernanke said to Congress when he addressed them a few weeks ago. And Christian Science Monitor actually wrote an article about this in 3 weeks. Ben Bernanke, one of what I would argue is one of the most pro-stimulus people in Washington. I mean, you talk about cuts, you can't even convince the guy to trim his beard, am I right? He told Congress that there are 2 things that need to be done in order to stop America from falling into recession in 2013. The first thing he said was to fix tax-mageddon, that we need to extend the Bush tax cuts, that we need to extend a whole lot of the tax cuts that we have on books today so that we stop this fiscal cliff, as he put it. The second thing that he said is that we need to bring in our spending levels, that the more and more that we continue to spend without coming up with ways to pay for it, that it's going to continue to jeopardize not only the credit rating, but the long-term solvency of the American economy. This is Ben Bernanke that we're talking about. When Ben Bernanke tells Congress that they need to do something about tax policy and that they need to do something about the national debt, that should be sending alarms across the country, am I right? But people aren't waking up. In spite of not only the testimonials that Congress has received, but the overwhelming empirical evidence that shows that long-term deficits actually stifle economic growth. In fact, the Washington Post just released an article on June 18th where they highlighted a study that was done by the National Bureau of Economic Research. And this study found, they went back all the way to the 1300s, to the Gilded Age, worked forward, looked at the debt that was run through with the Napoleonic Wars in Netherlands. They ran all the way through our country's history, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 1990s, and Greece's current situation today, and comprised all of recorded history and of recent and not so recent civilizations, and found that when you add up all the evidence together, that long-term deficits lead to 24% less GDP growth. The empirics is sound. We continue to run these long-term deficits, our economy is going to suffer. So what's causing this? Why is it that when we have some of the best economists of our age, and we have this overwhelming empirical evidence that shows that this overspending is only working to America's detriment? We believe it has to deal with the youth, with the young people of America. We believe that there is a trade-off happening right now, a debt-to-entitlement trade-off, that we are passing off the debt to future generations to pay for current spending practices today. And we are teaching our kids to value short-term economic growth over long-term economic stability. And that's not a message that America can really run on for very long. So when we talk about the problems with the youth, we have to recognize that there are 2 problems. The first problem being that they don't know how indebted they are. They don't understand, they don't comprehend how much they actually owe back. In fact, there was an article done by Investors Business Daily in February that showed that a high school graduate today who had just graduated, if you add up all of the debt and you add up all of the unfunded liabilities and you look at that individual high school student's tax burden, that they will owe over $720,000 within their lifetime. That's one student. I know, I don't have $720,000. I know that Stephen, who's also here with me from Turning Point USA, does not have $720,000 to pay for his share of the federal debt. And I really don't know of any high school students right now who have that money to contribute back. If you guys do, I mean, you know, we've got a donation jar. We would love it if you guys could contribute your share of the deficit. But the point is that we're not getting this message to hit home with students. That they are the worst off in this debt to entitlement trade-off. But because they continue to say nothing about it, Congress takes it as implicit consent that we must be okay with it. We must be okay with them spending our future away because we're continuing not to say anything about it. Which goes to the second problem. The ones who are aware aren't being informed properly. That we aren't trying to calibrate the message to our audience. And that's something that we've learned with a lot of our liberal tactics. Howard Zinn, as I said before, stated the best kind of change is targeted change. You have to target your message to your audience. And we looked at the exit polls, we did demographic research, and we recognized that the most conservative age group happens to be the oldest age bracket. And the most liberal demographic is the group that's about 18 to 24. So we recognize that if we go up in front of a bunch of college students, we talk to them about this conservative agenda, and we talk to them about, you know, championing free markets, or we talk to them about cuts, that these are things that the liberal kids are just going to laugh at us about, that they don't think that we're going to be able to calibrate with them, which at Turning Point USA, we have been very effective at reaching out to the youth, and even more effective at reaching out to liberals, because we understand who we're dealing with. We know that conservatives will appreciate us because we're a group that champions free markets and smaller government. That independents will appreciate our goal of trying to keep major programs like Social Security and Medicaid solvent in the long term. And that liberals will appreciate us for standing up for disenfranchised citizens, standing up against generationalist policies. And that's something that Charlie and I worked very intensively about how to calibrate our message to appeal to young liberal youth. We are formally a nonpartisan organization, but we recognize that we have to be very specific with our rhetoric, and we have to be very careful with the message that we are trying to impose and the frame of which we built it upon. So we've read Saul Alinsky, we've read Howard Zinn, we've read John Rawls. We understand all the liberal teachings. We also know that with these community organizing tactics, Saul Alinsky tactic of going in through the back door, we are going to take the very tenets of liberalism to take down the current leaders of the liberalist movement and show how the very same principles that they are trying to uphold, that they are the biggest ones to undermine them. We talk to kids about social justice. We talk to kids about egalitarianism. We use their own rhetoric, and we bring this message to their ball court. And we say, if you claim that you're a proponent of social justice, and you believe that the president is also a proponent of social justice, how can you claim that he is being successful in these liberal goals when he is taking trillions of dollars and passing it off to future generations? That is generational inequality. That this is a socially unjust practice. We work very hard so that regardless of where you lie in the political spectrum, that you can agree with our message. Because at Turning Point USA, we do not look at politics vertically. We do not see the left, the middle, and the right. We have a different way of looking at politics, a vertical way of looking at politics. We look at what is done at the top and how the bills are filtered down to the bottom. How current spending practices today are expected to be maintained by debt that we are passing off to future generations. Generational theft. as we have termed it. And this has spread like wildfire, not only with conservatives, but with liberals alike. People who have been devout Rawlsians, devout neoliberals, who have told me that the last thing that they would advocate for would be reducing government spending. But when you look at the facts, and you understand that economics is a zero-sum game, that when you take the poor people of today who are relying on government programs, you are not going to be benefiting them by ensuring that the volume of spending will ensure that these programs aren't available for people tomorrow. That by trying to build the safety net, we're going to ensure that the safety net gets ripped right through, and that the safety net will not be there to provide for anyone. And this is a message that liberals understand. That this is something that young college youth can understand. That the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to run out of money by 2033. Some estimates say that that's as early as 2030, maybe even sooner. And that we, as a conservative, do not want to reform these programs so that we can abolish these programs. We want to reform these programs so that we can save these programs. And if people think that it's necessary to save them, they understand that we need to bring it down the size and scope of these deficits. We also understand that in order to reach out to the youth, we have to appeal to them in ways that they'll understand it and they'll be able to jump on board. Charlie and I started the Dorm-to-Dorm initiative. Just as politicians have people who go and walk precincts and try to increase awareness about their campaigns, we are establishing college chapters around the country. We just established one in Puget Sound, Washington, that already has over 10 events. And we are working with a member of Iowa State University who just stood up, and we are getting his college chapter fully operational. We have about close to half a dozen more college students who have stood up, and we're working with them to establish college chapters. And we are going to take their housing units and their dorm structures and print out millions of our brochures that explain the basics of generational theft, that talk about our policy solutions, and that inform voters about how detrimental this debt will be to the American economy. And we're going to hand them out to college campuses all over the country to engage the youth and to empower the youth. We also understand that if we post a long article, that kids aren't going to read it. Charlie's written for Breitbart. Charlie's written for Fox. He wrote an op-ed article. And we've been on the news. We're actually working with the senior executive at Fox to be on Cabuto next week. But this is how we reach out to the top of the generation, to the older folks. Watch it. Watch it. Careful, buddy. But in order to reach out to the kids, they're not going to read a Wall Street Journal article. They're not going to read an op-ed in Fox News. But we understand how we can engage them. Charlie and I are working very hard to work on a social media campaign. We designed a series of political memes. I took a picture of Barack Obama, and he had like a very concerned look on his face. And he was sitting, or he was standing, and Joe Biden was sitting, and he had like a deer in headlights look. Right? He did not even know what was going on. And the meme stated, which is almost what we're trying to create, internet political cartoons. We've got big problems, Joe. These kids figured out who has to pay back the debt. This meme has been shared over tens of thousands of times, and it has been reposted by Young Americans for Liberty, by the Heritage Foundation, by Fox. It's gotten a lot of exposure, close to 100 million views collectively with all of these reshares. And we understand the changing culture of politics. That we can expect young kids today to be reading the articles. This is the ADHD generation. They don't have the attention span. And we've actually have done the research that shows that sound bites over time have actually shrunk from what used to be half a minute in the early 1990s to about 4 or 5 seconds. And we understand that even if kids have the attention span, they might not want to read that article. But they read a meme, they think it's funny, they laugh about it, and they reshare it with their friends. But then they kind of laugh and they start to think about it. Well, wait a second. How big is this thing? We have something that we engage them with. We have the humor, and we establish intrigue. And that intrigue is what is establishing people to get them to build college chapters. That's what's getting them to volunteer to speak at events. That's what's growing this national movement, which is where we talk about these policy solutions. We're doing what we can to build the grassroots organization, to get the kids active in politics. But we understand the concept of spectators in democracy and activists in democracy, participators in democracy. This is a Noam Chomsky concept, that there are people who will vote, will maybe show up to an occasional town hall meeting, and they think that they are participators in democracy. But then there are the actual participants. There are people like Adam, who opened the books. There are people like Frank, who is the director for Illinois Center Right Coalition. There are people that are going beyond their civic duty, and they're actually working to change the political culture and to change public policy. And that's what we're trying to engage the youth to do. In fact, I will be staying at home at Harper so that I can go to school during the week, and on weekends I can do whatever I can to get kids active, to spread our message. And Charlie actually flew down to Baylor University and had a meeting with Ken Starr. And Ken Starr said, "We love what you're doing, Charlie. What you are doing with this organization is going to change this election. And not only do we support you at the school," he emailed every single professor in the economics and business department and said, "Not only are you going to be okay with Charlie Kirk taking time off of school, you're going to give him college credit for doing it." Which means that Charlie isn't going to have to worry about school next year. He's going to take at least a semester off, but it could be close to a full year. I'll be at home, and I'll be working with this stuff around the clock. But Charlie will be single-handedly devoted to turning around this deficit culture day in and day out. And this is the leadership that we are establishing. As far as our public policy goes, we have about 5 or 6 different things on our official platform, but I'll just talk about 2. But first, we believe that we need to hold the government accountable. And a lot of that has been done because we haven't put enough pressure on them to pass a budget, to actually come up with a document that would put restraints on how much they would spend. Harry Reid, how many of you approve of what he's done in the Senate? Anyone? We don't think that if a government employee is there in the Senate and he's supposed to be doing his job, passing budgets, establishing some kind of leadership in the Senate, that if he's not doing his job, we really don't understand why a lot of people in Congress continue to get pay increases every year. So we have actually come out and publicly endorsed the plan that Joe Walsh introduced in the House. That was the No Budget, No Pay Act, which said that if the government does not produce a budget, that they do not get paid. No budget, no pay. Another proposal that we've discussed is the fact that Congress is continuing to spend out of control, but there really is no legal provision to stop them from doing it. That we at Turning Point USA view this to be morally unconscionable, what Congress is doing. that they are continuing to spend trillions of dollars, and they are telling our kids, they're telling the current youth, the people who have just been born, and the people who have yet to have been born, that this is your problem, and this is an issue that you're going to have to deal with. We don't think that Congress should be able to wipe their hands clean of this. We think that generational theft should be made unconstitutional by passing the balanced budget amendment and constitutionally requiring Congress to only spend as much as they're taking in. Now, this is obviously going to take a lot of work, and Charlie and I, members like Stephen, members like people who have been standing up in Iowa, in Washington, we're also working with in Nashville to do an event for the Nashville Tea Party. Baylor actually said that they would host an event for us, and we want to speak around the country. Charlie actually met the vice president of Hillsdale College on his trip down to Texas, and the vice president told him, we want to host an event for you. We are reaching out to colleges. We are reaching out to the youth. And we will deploy the network that we are building, and we will have them go from dorm room to dorm room, from college campus to college campus around the country, getting the word out and doing whatever we have to do to bring in the reins of government and to bring in this ridiculous government spending. Please, tell your kids, tell your grandchildren, tell as many people as you can to like us on Facebook, facebook.com/turningpointusa, to go to our website, turningpointusa.net, to follow us on Twitter, it's @turningpointusa, and to host events for us, to donate, to do whatever we can, because we feel that in 2012 we can make the single most important issue with this election being budget and deficit reform. And that's a threatening thought. Obama understands this. He's been very genius with his timing lately. When the April jobs report came out, that same weekend, he gave an announcement about gay marriage and about how he came out for it. And then there was the announcement about illegal immigration and about how he's going to grant the student visas. You know when he did that? The same weekend that the May jobs report came out. He's trying to do whatever he can to shift the issue of this election to social issues. Because he knows that if he does that, he will win the youth, because the youth tend to lean more socially liberal. We are doing whatever we can to stop it, because we recognize what he's doing. He's saying, look over here, look at the social issues, when he has all of these fiscal abominations to answer to. And we are trying to change the conversation, to get the youth to question the current administration and to say, you might say you're socially this or that, but we know that the issue is the economy. We know the issue is the debt. And we are continuing to put pressure on this administration, and we will do it all the way through November. And after 2012, we will shift that focus to the state governments so that we can continue to restore the values of fiscal responsibility and frugality in our nation's culture.